Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining MRI-Simmons today. We're happy to bring you the third installment of our ongoing COVID-19 webinar series entitled Analyzing the Key Attitudes That Influence American Behaviors During COVID-19. I'm Matt Pedersen from the MRI-Simmons marketing team, and I'm joined as always by Karen Ramsbacker, who will walk us through the new findings from our latest wave for the next 30 minutes or so. Let me turn it over to you, Karen. It seems like this study, which was started just tracking consumer attitudes around the pandemic, has become so much more than when we started it back in March. It's got parenting, it's got presidential politics, it's got racial inequality, it's got a lot of new kind of tentacles to it.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in the world today, and we felt that the COVID tracker was a great place to talk to consumers about all of it and then marry that to our national data sets. So, and I really love the title of this one because it does cover the basics of what I'll be talking about today. And the hot spots are, of course, parents' concerns around reopening of schools, the presidential election and politics around that. And then what we continue to cover is what does it mean to be alive during this pandemic in the United States? And how does that affect all the businesses that we're involved with? So let me go to the next slide here. This is the methodology basics. This is the third wave of our COVID-19 tracker. And these trackers come from 5,000 nationally representative online adults. And then they're weighted and projected to the US population and fused back to the MRI-Simmons national data sets so that our clients can do deeper profiling. And of course, that data is made available to our clients to mine in all the ways they do through all the systems they use. And we make the information available in these free reports that we share on our website. So if you happen to miss the prior two, those are up on the website now, as is the full report for this one. So as you can see here, there are many topics in the report and even more in the data set itself. Today, I'm going to focus on a quick temperature check of our COVID personality types and the attitudes around COVID, as well as the related behaviors and how this is changing the world for us today. Where is this going to take us all, and what might it mean for the school year and specifically the political race? So let's dive in. The psychographic segments that we've identified are stabilizing. What I mean by that is when it comes to these type of personality attitudes that we've been asking Americans about, we ask, what will you be like after COVID-19 passes? When you look at the left of the slide, the majority are accepting, meaning that they believe in fate and whatever is meant to be will be. 4 in 10 at the lower end of the circle say they're nervous, which is up since April by 5 points, but steady since June. And the nervous segment has always skewed female, and that is still true. 58% of the nervous segment are female in this wave. In the middle, we have the questions that we ask about behaviors. So when it comes to the behavior you're most likely to identify with after COVID-19 passes, 7 in 10 Americans say they fall in the live and learn bucket, meaning I will be a lot more cautious in what I do and how I do it. And that is up quite a bit since April, but again, steady since June. The other 29%, the lower end of that circle, are in the bounce back group, who are eager to go back to their old style of living. And this does tend to be a more male and younger phenomenon, and that is continuing on. So overall, it's clear there's a long-term impact on what people are feeling and what they intend to do. Life is different and will continue to be so. And since we had seen the nervous group tick up from April to June, we added a new question about whether people were clear or confused about what they need to do about COVID-19. And you can see here 3 out of 4 are clear, the exception being among parents, who are more confused than most Americans. And that's understandable given some of the drama that's happening around the country around school reopening. And I know for myself as a mom in New York City, it's changing minute to minute, day to day. So this gives us a quick note, and I just want to say, the longer this goes on, the longer it feels like it's going on. We created sort of a heat map style here, where the sunshiny yellow represents the people who feel that this will be over in about 4 months. And it goes up in color to the darkest red, where those are the people who expect it to last more than a year. So among the total American population, 58% expect COVID-19 to last more than a year. And that is up from June, where I just added the bar to the left, where it was 43% in June. And on the far right are a couple call outs for the Gen Zs who've moved up quite a bit in the category of thinking this will stretch out for more than a year. And even the bounce back group who really want to go right back to living the way they were, they're less hopeful than they were, because in June, 49% thought it would last less than 6 months, and now only 19% say that. Most Americans are also concerned about a spike in COVID cases due to the relaxed restrictions, and 57% think businesses should stay closed. Now, an interesting thing is that 50% of all adults tell us they plan to get vaccinated as soon as it becomes available, even if the trials were rushed. Not surprisingly, this is higher among older people who are 65 or older and upper income American households. So, in light of these relaxing restrictions and reopening, what are we doing to stay safe, and how do we feel about it? Staying home was hard, and about a third say it was an overreaction. And 22% even think social distancing is an overreaction. But that means the rest don't believe that. In fact, the vast majority believe that masks help slow the spread of the virus and should be required. And among those who think businesses should stay closed, from the previous slide, 92% agree that masks should be required. The exception, once again, is the bounce back group, who are highest in believing that wearing a mask should not be required because no one has the right to tell me what to do. And as this is going on, I should just also point out that social distancing is making people depressed, but at less of a level than it was before, except among the Gen Zs who still feel really sad. Some of these new COVID habits, like mask wearing, are becoming the norm. And you can see the far left column shows that 85% of Americans have worn a mask, which is up 20% since June. And in that little orange bar inside the blue, 40% say they're going to continue to do so once COVID-19 passes. And so we may see America become a little more like Asia in the idea that when you are feeling sick, you may wear a mask to prevent your germs from going to others. Since June, across the board, the biggest increases are in purchasing online instead of in store and using contactless payment. So those are two that have ticked up since the last wave. And while both of those were on the rise, we believe that this crisis has accelerated their adoption and will continue to stay that way. I also want to draw your eye to the 1/5 from the left, which is about taking my health more seriously. We see a lot of commitment there to that behavior and people saying that they're going to continue doing that. So that will have big implications for all kinds of businesses. In the mode of taking our health more seriously, people are turning more to wellness activities. This is a slide that shows among Americans who canceled or postponed these various activities, which we've been tracking for the past several waves, when do they plan to turn back to them? At the bottom of the columns is the dark red, which is the already did it, meaning, yeah, I'm already back to doing that. And it's highest for those going to the doctor and dentist, which is in that health category, and personal appointments for our hairstyles. Both Matt and I have recently been to the barber. Followed by the non-essential purchases, which are coming back. To look a little deeper into one of these categories, or actually I'll do two, let me highlight travel first. Among half of the adults who say they put personal travel on hold, you can see in the orange bar right here that 36% expect to reschedule in the next 6 months. And who they skew more male, upper income, over 50 without children under 18 in their household. And when it comes to their media behaviors, they tend to watch Major League Baseball and college football on TV. They're also into getting their sports news online, and they're more likely to use the ESPN website or apps. 55% of this group think that COVID will resolve within the next 6 months, which may be why they're eager to travel then. The other one I wanted to point out is at the other end, on the right side, the far right, the gym and health club memberships. Those are among the highest for saying they're never going to return. That's that 13% in the gold at the top. However, among those who will be coming back, if you look at the next 6-month category, which is the 44%, in our data set, we see that those skew male, parents with younger children, millennials, well-educated, upper income. And when it comes to media, they're much more streamers using Hulu, Netflix, and Prime Video. This is also a group that is much more likely to say the pandemic has affected them personally very much. 35% of them said that. So it's important for brands and agencies to note, how people are feeling about this. So as they're thinking about reaching them, they can bear that in mind. Going from travel to other places and spaces we're in, what the data tells us is that people are more comfortable in social gatherings that take place in settings where spacing can be controlled. And even though the bounce backs, which is that purple column, second from the left, are the most comfortable of all in every setting, we see the same pattern across the board. The safest places are a friend's home, open space like a city park or beach, very large spaces like ballparks. They're definitely feeling more comfortable there. And an interesting note is we queried the data to see if those who said they were very comfortable in one setting are more likely to say the same in other settings. And yes, it's true. They're also more likely to share some other characteristics. They tend to be among the bounce back group and the accepting of fate. Males, 18 to 49, they expect COVID to resolve in less than 6 months, and to say that they have not been very personally affected by the pandemic. Since we included presidential questions in this one, they also expect to vote for Trump and prefer the children go back to school in person full time. Beyond the social gatherings, what about the other kinds of places that we all go? There is, good news, currently high levels of satisfaction with safety protocols at essential businesses. And people who are dissatisfied with any one of these places are more likely to be dissatisfied across all. For example, the majority of those who were dissatisfied with protocols at the doctor's office were also dissatisfied with the safety protocols at banks, grocery stores, large retail chains, convenience stores, and gas stations. A majority, they said all of those places are not safe. So there are some people who are feeling quite afraid. When it comes to leisure and entertainment, less essential businesses, the satisfaction levels are not as high as the previous slide, but still good. And granted, social distancing can be more difficult to enforce in these settings like beaches compared to places like doctor's office and grocery stores where they can do clear demarcations with tape on the floor. It's tough to do that at the beach. Speaking of beaches and distances, segue. Let's talk about the destinations that people went to for the summer and what people are thinking about doing in the next 3 months. Day trips to nearby destinations and road trips win, followed by beaches and lakes and national parks with hotels thrown in there too. A few specific notes. Men are more likely to be anticipating a road trip in the next 3 months, especially the younger men, 18 to 34. 27% say they plan to do so. I don't know, maybe it's the call of the open road, time to get out of the house. As for what people have recently done, among parents, 27% took a road trip, 21% stayed at a hotel, and 20% did a beach or lake vacation. For Gen Zs, there's no surprise in what they over-index for. 20% went camping, 16% rented a vacation home, and 14% visited a theme park. Gen Z is also the group you can count on for visiting a national park. 24% say they plan to do so, which is 1.5 times greater than the total population. When it comes to school, which comes right after summer, results are mixed and confusing about what to do and what parents want. Only 13% want their children back in school full-time right now, though that's much higher among the 29% who are those bounce-back parents. And of course, we always cover media in our studies, and there's good news for the media companies, and it's not surprising. After the pandemic passes, the majority of people plan to continue their pre-COVID media habits because what you like is what you like. Now, movies were the biggest group, and they may have a bit of a rocky restart, but there are groups that are eager to go, especially that bounce back group. When it comes to reading newspapers and reading magazines, 45% of the readers fall into our nervous segment, and they expect to continue reading. We know from past waves of this tracker that that nervous group was more media hungry in general, so no surprise here. We were also working with one of the media outlets on some questions around social media, given the news around it and around the elections. Our data shows here that less than a third trust social media as a definitive source, even as we continue to turn to it. Those who do trust the COVID information on social media are 21% more likely to plan on voting for Biden, and also more likely to feel that the state and local governments have done a good job dealing with the pandemic, which is an attitude that we've been tracking throughout the waves. Among the other headlines have been corporations and the roles they can play in society. So we asked some attitudinal statements around that. The majority of Americans believe that corporations need to get involved, but they also feel it isn't necessary for brands to change too much. And this attitude is driven for the total population by people over 65. And clearly the bounce back group also strongly feels that way. Getting into the topic of the horse race for the presidency, is there an opportunity here? You can see the divide among the various attitudinal groups we've been tracking, but the biggest note is the neither group, which is more than 1 in 5 across the board. And 35% of Gen Zs said neither, while 27% of Hispanics said the same. So clearly there's a divide in America today, no news there. The most divergence is apparent around the mail-in ballot issue. But on a unifying note, voter suppression is a concern for a majority across the board. And it's difficult to feel good about that being a unifier, but there it is. And of course, we always ask about the economy, and over half of Trump supporters are optimistic that the economy will be better off a year from now. As part of our service, we started tracking some societal attitudes since they've been in the news recently with newfound fervor. And while the slices here are for the political candidates, because that was one of the other new questions we added just for this time frame, you can look at this information for any demographic group and any striation for any type of brand user or media consumer that you want. And we expect to add more societal attitudes, and we'd love your input on what should be here in the future. So this is the part where you might want to use that question box to put your thoughts in so that we can capture them for the future. And so just a few notes on here. Total Americans, 77% agree that racism is a problem in our society today, and 80% say that violent protests don't help a cause. And at the bottom bar, when it comes to defunding the police, while only 31% of the total US pop believes that, a majority of Gen Zs, 52%, believe the police force should be defunded so that money can be allocated to other governing resources. So that's quite a big age gap, obviously. Another important societal force, the Black Lives Matter movement, has prompted roughly 1 in 5 Americans to educate themselves about racial inequality, and motivated roughly the same proportion of Biden supporters to shift their purchasing behavior to support Black-owned and socially impactful businesses. The movement has been a call to action among the Gen Z generation in particular, and especially those who plan to vote for Biden. Among Gen Zs who support Biden, 56% have educated themselves about inequality, 36% are paying more attention to diversity at companies, and 31% are shopping at Black-owned businesses. 19% have volunteered activism time for a social cause. And as you can see in the red bars, the Trump supporters overall are far less motivated to take action in response to BLM. So that's it for the highlights today, but I wanted to give a nod to a few things. The next tracker will be all about holiday topics related to COVID. So in it, we include some of the holiday spending. Will you be doing more, less, or the same amount? What are the categories in which you're planning to do it? Why are you planning to make the choices you're making? And where are you planning to do those kinds of purchases? Online, in store, both? And then what kinds, what kind of categories? As well as, the joke here is the elf and the reindeer socially distancing, but how is it that Americans plan to handle their holiday plans in this time of COVID? And on the right side of the slide here, I have some upcoming study releases that, I mentioned Wave 4 COVID trackers will be out at the end of October. We'll have the cannabis study as well as the podcast study, and followed by Cord Evolution, which will also have some COVID questions in it. And then multimedia engagement and the sports fan study will be out in December. So I'm almost done. My last point is I just wanted to take a moment to thank you for tuning in and to thank the team behind us for doing this data. I get to stand up here and share these findings with you, which is actually really fun for me. But there's a cadre of people who work on this, from the questionnaire designers to the project managers to the analysts to the marketers who make it look so great. So I just wanted to give them all a heartfelt thanks before we head into questions. And with that, I will stop talking. And Matt, did any questions come in?
Yeah, we've already got a few questions that have been popping in. Just as a reminder to everybody that's on with us, I know we flew through the meat and potatoes portion of the presentation pretty quickly, so that leaves us a few moments to do questions for the next 10 minutes or so. And we invite you to pop anything you've got at all, whether it's a direct question for Karen or something for us to consider in the future, as Karen mentioned before. Just pop all that into the questions box, and we'll take it all in. So let's see here. On the back to school data, are there differences in ages for the kids that are involved?
Yes, we did look at that. It is, I'll tell you, it's all over the place. People are quite confused, and that was shown in the first slide where the parents over-indexed for being confused, and obviously I'm one of them. But what was clear is that almost the majority, so 48% of parents of the 2 to 5 year olds prefer that their children be remote, full-time virtual, compared to 44% of the total US parents and 50% of the live and learn. There's another point about parents, about vaccination too. That was another thing we looked at. When it comes to getting the vaccine, parents also were different there, and I should have mentioned that on that slide. They really strongly agree at much higher levels than the rest of America, especially the ones with younger kids, 2 to 5 and 6 to 11. They plan to get vaccinated right away. So those are my 2 kid data points that I have at the ready.
Great. Question about slide 8, where you called out the taking health more seriously commitment among people who said they've started that and will continue to do that. Well, so can you use your crystal ball for a moment and talk about what you think that's going to mean as this situation evolves?
Good question. Yeah. So it had very high levels. I think it was in the 40s. I could go back to the slide, but it's in the 40s, but 80-something% of people said they plan to continue to do that. And I think what we're going to see here, and we'll be able to track it in the data, is the type of health behaviors that people will continue to do. And it'll be things like not just washing your hands, but going to the doctor more regularly. I'm proposing, theorizing, that it would be things like taking vitamins, doing more wellness activities, making sure you get outside and walk. I think people really, and this is opinion now, theories, became aware of, how sedentary they are and the need to move as well. So I think that's going to have big impacts on how people take their health seriously.
Great. Yeah, thank you for some of that commentary. This question says, on a few slides, you noted that there were people who answered they were unsatisfied with the protocols, and then you said they were, that they were the same people. Are they just negative Nellies who say no to everything, the way that some survey takers happen to be?
Yeah, negative Nellies. That's funny. No. We do clean out always from our data straight liners And when we looked at these people who had said that they were dissatisfied across the board, and I forget, there was one other place where we talked about them, they look different enough that we know it's not just no's. There are actual reasons behind it. So we actually believe that there's a cohort, it's not big, but there's a small cohort of people who are quite afraid of what's in front of us right now. And the question remains whether they'll stay that dissatisfied and fearful, or will they get used to the new normal, or will it take the end of the pandemic for them to feel good again? So it's a good question, but no, they're not truly just negative Nellies. It's real.
So there's a question on a bit of methodology. Are there any differences in polling by region in the US, or political party or ideology leaning? And I know you touched on some of that. This question came in pretty early, so maybe some of that got answered, but maybe you can speak to the regional part of it.
Yeah. Well, of course, in our data set, and I don't have that data run in front of me, but we do look at political leaning, meaning not just party, but are you liberal, or do you see yourself as liberal or conservative? So that is in the data, but I would imagine it aligns by who they chose. And for regionality, we do look at regionality, and it is part of the fusion process in the larger region areas. I don't have the data at the tip of my fingers, and I actually don't have my chat on, so I can't ask the analysts, but we can certainly respond to that and see if there are skews. I would suspect it goes along the same levels of the support of the president. So probably seeing the regionality play out in the same ways.
Mm-hmm. This question is about the non-essential spending category. Do you have in front of you what that refers to specifically? What non-essential spending is? This asker is interested in home remodeling, so maybe you could
home
identify
remodeling
which that is.
Definitely in there as a category in and of itself. I just don't have the data in front of me, but if you have access to the data set, or if you don't, talk to the sales rep or write to info@mrisimmons.com, and the data is available. I just don't. That would be. I'm not sure how the question was worded, but we can share the questionnaire as well. Great. And I know home remodeling is a category that we've been covering.
Yeah, I recognize that as well. Here's just a comment, and I'll just run this by you now live on the air here. I would like to see more about consumer expectations for brands to step up in support of racial justice.
Specifically, okay.
Yes.
Yes, we would be happy to support that. You want to know, I assume that the questioner is asking people's attitudes towards brands that step up in support of racial justice. And I think,
and we'll have the exact wording that they put in, and we can refer back to that when that's
actually, if the questioner wanted to add more, I'd love to know how you think, or if you think we need to define what step up means, because there are different ways, right?
Right.
Or do we just leave it vague because you want to know a feeling as opposed to a specific action? But if you're asking so that your brand can know sort of more exactly what to do and who that would appeal to, please give me the options, give us the options of what you'd like to see. That would be most helpful. Great idea.
We have another questioner asking about sentiment towards public transportation. And I feel like we've had that in prior presentations.
Yes, it is. I can't recall if it's in this particular tracker, but it was definitely in the previous one. And if it is something that is of interest again, pop it into the chat or the question area, and we'll make sure to include it if it didn't. We're doing this every 6 weeks, so we're trying to add new all the time and kind of retire the older. So if there are things that you love that you want to see us keep tracking, please make sure to let us know, either through the info or through your rep. We so appreciate collaborating on this process with our clients. It's been wonderful and so excited.
Yeah, and there are a lot of great suggestions that are coming in, and it's great to see. someone else had asked about people moving or relocating during the pandemic and any ripple effects from that. I don't know that we've got
We
that yet, but
we had that in the data. We did not see that was a very small amount, very small, and it didn't seem to have a big impact. Now, I would imagine something like that would take quite a while to show up because the process of moving is not easy unless you've left your apartment for economic, or I say apartment because I live in New York City, left your home for economic reasons and moved in somewhere else. But we didn't see, it's very small. And I'm sure we can get the exact data to the questioner.
And this question is about access. Is this a separate data set, or if you have access to all MRI waves, do you have access to this?
This is, well, I'll say it this way. It's fused to the national study, but if you're using a processing system, which people are, to access the data, it has its own name. So it would be, I don't know what the official name is, COVID Tracker Wave 4 or some Wave 3 or something like that. And it is, if you have access to the previous waves, you will get access to this one as well.
And the last two that came in are eerily similar, so I'll try to package them up together for you. And maybe this is something, a looking forward question here, but two people simultaneously asking about sentiment toward the economy and stock market / their personal finance situation, which again, I know was in earlier. And
yeah, it was in, I think it was in this wave as well. And we just did not see a lot of change in that at all. So if you could, as the questioner, if you could be more specific about what it is you're trying to find out, that would help us write the attitude or behavior with more refinement to get at your needs.
Great. I am thrilled. We flew through that and we got covered a lot of ground in not a lot of time. That's it for what's here in the queue. And Karen, the presentation as always was excellent, but that's going to do it for us today. So thanks again, Karen. And as Karen noted, all of our colleagues behind the scenes who are help putting these together. And we're excited, as Karen also pointed to our upcoming reports, we're excited to be releasing all kinds of content around each of those webinars, reports, and other goodies for all of our friends and colleagues to look at. So we look forward to sharing that all with you. And thank you again for spending a half hour or about a half hour this afternoon. It was great, and we look forward to seeing everybody again.
Be safe, be well.